My name is Ted Bundy.
I've never spoken to anybody about this.
30 years after he was executed, notorious serial killer Ted Bundy is having his story retold in documentaries and crime series this year.
Final confessions, twisted philosophies, and unusual revelations have been shared in their last interviews by individuals who showed no care for the lives of other people or even their own. Prepare yourself to confront the chilling depths of evil that can lurk in human minds. Here are interviews with 10 death row inmates right before execution. Number 1. Ted Bundy. Theodore Robert Bundy was a serial criminal who terrorized the United States in the 1970s. Bundy was able to fool both his victims and society at large with his captivating demeanor and dazzling features. He preyed on young women, drawing them into his web of deception and brutality. Bundy's method was coldly planned. He would frequently approach his victims in public, assuming various guises in order to earn their trust. To garner compassion and aid, he would sometimes pretend to have a physical handicap. At times, he would imitate an authority figure, preying on society's confidence in those who were supposed to safeguard us. Once he got them under his control, he would drag them to his lair, where he would put them through horrific atrocities. Despite his horrible deeds, Bundy eluded arrest for an extended period of time. He was eventually apprehended and imprisoned in Utah in 1975 for aggravated abduction and attempted criminal assault. This arrest, however, was simply the tip of the iceberg. Bundy's name began to surface as a possible suspect in a series of unsolved crimes spanning numerous states. As the evidence against him grew stronger, he turned to desperate means, staging 2 spectacular escapes from jail. Bundy's desire for violence grew stronger. He went on a crime spree, leaving a path of dread and ruin in his wake. Bundy was eventually apprehended in 1978 and faced charges in Colorado and Florida. He was found guilty in 2 trials and received a sentence that cost him his life. Bundy's real victim count has remained a mystery throughout his reign of terror. He admitted to taking 30 lives, but the true number is thought to be significantly higher. Many questions were posed to him during his last interview. Even as the authorities were testing his electric chair, he appeared calm. He was spotted turning and flinching as the electricity fluctuated. But when asked about his victim, Kimberly Leach, he got angry and frightened and replied, "I can't talk about her right now." Bundy's long-awaited reign of terror ended on January 24, 1989. In the last interview, Bundy also said that the basic spirit and humanity that God gave him was intact, but it was overwhelmed at times. He was executed in the Rayford electric chair in Florida. The whole world exhaled a collective sigh of relief as the clock struck 7:16 a.m. A shocking sight was playing out across the street from the prison. As the execution took place, hundreds of people gathered, singing, dancing, and firing off fireworks in a bizarre celebration. Number 2. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy was an American serial criminal who was responsible for taking the lives of at least 33 young boys and men during the 1970s. Born in 1942 in the city of Chicago, Illinois, Gacy grew up in a working-class neighborhood. His father was abusive and an alcoholic. He has a domineering and overprotective mother. Gacy was physically and emotionally tortured by his father throughout his life, who would frequently beat him with a leather strap. He was also bullied by other youngsters, which contributed to his isolation and lack of friends. Despite these obstacles, Gacy was able to land a position as a manager at a fast food restaurant after graduating from high school in 1964. He married his first wife, Marilyn Myers, and the couple had 2 children. Their marriage, however, was far from secure, and Gacy had several intimate encounters with other men. Gacy was convicted of exploiting a teenage boy in 1968 and sentenced to 10 years in jail. Surprisingly, he was freed on parole in 1970 after only 18 months in prison. Gacy preyed on young men and boys, luring them to his home with false promises of a job or booze. He would then torture them, leading to their demise. Gacy maintained his criminal spree throughout the 1970s. However, in 1978, Gacy's actions took a tragic turn when he abducted Robert Peast, a young man who had sought a position with his firm. The disappearance of Peast spurred an inquiry, which led to the police obtaining a search warrant for Gacy's home. The subsequent investigation revealed a horrible sight. The multiple remains of his victims were recovered from the crawl space and garden. Gacy was arrested when the police uncovered 29 bodies on his farm. He first pleaded not guilty, but then altered his plea to guilty due to insanity. Gacy's defense team claimed that he had a mental ailment. The prosecution, on the other hand, produced proof of Gacy's preparation and comprehension of the implications of his actions. Gacy was scheduled to be executed at the sentencing hearing. In an interview with CBS, he preserved his innocence despite the fact that it was obvious that he was lying. He said, "If they're brainwashed into what they believe, fine, go ahead, but vengeance is mine. Say it to the Lord because you'll have executed somebody who didn't commit a crime." He also went on to say, "When they paint the image that I was this monster who picked up these altar boys along the street and swatted them like flies, I said this is ludicrous, but the jury didn't find it ludicrous." Gacy's punishment was carried out by lethal injection on May 10, 1994. Despite overwhelming proof of his guilt, he maintained his innocence until the end. Number 3. Timothy McVeigh. Timothy James McVeigh was not your average guy. He was born in 1968 in Lockport, New York. He went on to become one of America's most known domestic terrorists. McVeigh's tortuous path brought him from a traumatic upbringing to a vengeful deed against the federal government, culminating in the Oklahoma City explosion in 1995. McVeigh suffered from bullying as a child, escaping into a realm of illusions in which he envisioned rising up to his abusers. McVeigh had conflicting characteristics as an adult, being quiet and withdrawn to some, yet extroverted and amusing to others. But there was something sinister hiding underneath his average appearance. McVeigh enrolled in the United States Army at the age of 20 in 1988, where he learned about guns, explosives, and sniper techniques. During this time, he formed a friendship with Terry Nichols, a fellow disillusioned military veteran. They conspired to carry out a terrorist attack that shook the foundations of America. Their twisted plan came to reality on April 19, 1995, when McVeigh parked a leased Ryder truck filled with a lethal ammonium nitrate concoction at the front of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Tower. He went away after lighting the fuse, leaving behind an unknowing metropolis. A massive explosion shook Oklahoma City at 9:02 a.m., turning the edifice to rubble. The destruction was immense. 168 people lost their lives, and 684 were injured. McVeigh said the bombing was retaliation for the government's sieges of Waco and Ruby Ridge. Following the blast, law enforcement authorities went on a rigorous hunt for the offender. McVeigh's rental truck gave an important lead, and he was recognized as the key suspect using a composite sketch. His arrest, however, was the outcome of a normal traffic check rather than a manhunt. Unaware of McVeigh's horrible crime, State Trooper Charles J. Hanger detained him for driving without a license and with an unlawful handgun. McVeigh's arrest triggered a court procedure that would eventually determine his destiny. The judges thought it unreasonable to allow him to live after he was found guilty on all charges. In an interview 60 minutes before the execution, he conveyed no remorse for what he had done, saying, "I'm not putting on a game face, I'm just being me." He also went on to say that he is not exactly like people perceive him to be. He asked the interviewer whether he considered him pure evil and the face of terror. 6 years after the horrible deed that shook the country, McVeigh was executed by lethal injection at the Federal Correctional Complex in Indiana on June 11, 2001. Number 4. Robert Sullivan. Robert Austin Sullivan was born in July 1947 in Boston, Massachusetts. Sullivan was adopted shortly after birth and raised in Belmont, Massachusetts by his adoptive mother. Nobody could have predicted that this disturbed young guy would eventually become the focus of a high-profile case that gripped the nation. On the fateful evening of April 8, 1973, Joseph Sullivan and his partner in crime, Reed McLaughlin, brazenly entered a Howard Johnson's restaurant in Homestead, Florida. Sullivan had previously served as an assistant manager there. Donald Schmidt, the new assistant manager who had crossed paths with the hazardous combo, was their target. Schmidt was abducted, shackled with tape, and carried to a barren Everglades swamp. He was brutally shot at least 4 times with a 12-gauge shotgun. Sullivan and McLaughlin took Schmidt's credit cards and watches, leaving a bloody trail in their wake. Sullivan was apprehended by the authorities 9 days later. Schmidt's personal possessions, firearms, and damning words were discovered as evidence linking him to the terrible act. Sullivan's claimed confession, which also implicated McLaughlin, sealed their fate. Sullivan, on the other hand, later claimed that his confession was pressured and given while under the influence, and he maintained his innocence. Surprisingly, his counsel failed to seek key witnesses who may have given an alibi, which complicated the case even further. Sullivan was convicted of a first-degree crime and was given the punishment of execution on November 12, 1973, despite his pleas. Following a decade of agony on Execution Row, Sullivan demonstrated model behavior, as recounted by prison officials and Catholic priests. His execution was planned for June 1979, but it was briefly stopped due to the intervention of a federal court. Sullivan gave an interview in the final hours before his execution, in which he criticized the sentence as a phony gesture by politicians aiming to assuage the public's clamor for justice. He was adamantly opposed to capital punishment, pointing out its errors and arguing that it was only a political tool. His pleadings, however, fell on deaf ears. Sullivan faced the electric chair at Florida State Prison on November 30, 1983, at the age of 36. As he prepared to pass away, he savored his farewell meal: a steak, French fries, milk, and fresh strawberries. Number 5. Robert Fratta. Robert Fratta, a former Houston police officer, was the mastermind behind the 1994 crime that took the life of his 33-year-old wife, Farah Fratta. The crime occurred during a contentious divorce and custody fight when tensions were high and emotions ran high. Robert Fratta sought the assistance of a middleman, Joseph Pristash, in order to recruit a gunman, Howard Guidry. Farah was ambushed and shot twice in the garage of their Atascocita, Texas home. Neighbors observed the event and immediately called the police. During the inquiry, it was learned that Fratta and his wife were fighting over custody of their 3 children. Their divorce was sparked, according to court records, by Fratta's extramarital appetites. For years, Fratta maintained his innocence, but the solid evidence against him grew overwhelming. Fratta's conviction was held despite appeals and accusations of inadequate evidence and improper jury instructions. The Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles overwhelmingly denied his innocence. Fratta had spent 27 years in prison and indicated fatigue and a desire to depart in his own words. The road to his execution had been tortuous, with the day and hour hanging over him for years. However, during his last interview, he appeared quite calm, and when asked whether he is occasionally terrified of what is coming at him, he responded, "Oh, no, are you kidding? I pray to Lord every night to take me in my sleep. I'm not afraid." Fratta opted not to make a final comment when the deadly dosage was put into his veins at the Huntsville jail in Texas. When the warden inquired if he had anything to say, Fratta just said, "No." Barry Brown, his spiritual advisor, delivered prayers, asking for comfort for those who had been brokenhearted by the awful events and pity for Fratta's soul. Fratta closed his eyes and took a deep breath as the medicine took effect. Soon after, he snorted 6 times before ceasing all activity. Fratta's eldest son, Bradley Baker, stood at the window of the row chamber and observed the execution. Fratta refused to recognize or look at his kid, creating a lifetime of misery and broken trust. Number 6. Billy Coble. Billy Wayne Coble, a Vietnam veteran and electrician, married Karen Vicha in the summer of 1988 with great expectations. However, their relationship quickly deteriorated, resulting in marital issues and separation prior to the sad events that occurred afterward. The series of events started when Coble kidnapped Karen Vicha at knife point in an attempt to persuade her not to divorce him. Coble's mental distress caused him to travel around the town of Axtell, Texas, in pursuit of his divorced wife after releasing her unharmed. When he couldn't find Karen, he ran across her mother, Zelda Walling Vicha, her father, Robert Joseph Vicha, and her brother, John Robert Vicha. According to reports, Coble shot them in their house out of a sense of power. Later, he tracked down Karen and abducted her at gunpoint, handcuffing the children and their cousin to a bed. Coble was chased by police, who smashed his automobile during the chase. Despite being hurt by Coble's assault, Karen survived the incident and Coble was captured. During his hospitalization for vehicle accident injuries, Coble allegedly admitted to many hospital staff members that he had taken the lives of 3 individuals. He was given capital punishment in 1990. However, his execution sentence was reversed in 2007, resulting in a retrial in 2008, where the jury condemned him to the same sentence once again. In an interview, Coble was asked what happened that day. Coble responded, It matters to some people. It matters to me. It really no longer matters. Coble was asked if he regretted what he had done that day, if he understood the horror of his actions, and if he felt remorse. Coble responded, expressing remorse for Karen and her parents. He acknowledged feeling bad about his first victim in Vietnam as well, with the memories haunting him vividly. He was questioned if he would say sorry to the victim's family before being executed, and he said, I've already said that I regret what happened now. I truly regret what happened, but I also truly regret what happens to a lot of things in life. Coble spent nearly 30 years on Capital Punishment Row, escaping execution. Finally, on February 28th, he became the state of Texas's oldest executed convict. His narrative is a stark reminder of the catastrophic repercussions of unbridled emotions. Number 7. Carol Cole. Cole was born in Sioux City, Iowa, during his father's absence due to World War II, and had a chaotic childhood. His mother had many relationships and exposed him to emotional torture, even disguising him as a female at school, which resulted in constant mocking. Cole's dark journey began when, at the age of 8, he drowned a friend named Dwayne in a lake in retaliation for earlier abuse. Cole spent the next many years in several psychiatric facilities, where physicians chronicled his violent delusions. He was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, which would influence his future behavior. Cole's aggressive inclinations led to a failed marriage and an arrest for arson. He also attempted to assault a girl in Missouri, which resulted in his arrest and subsequent admission to a mental hospital. A slew of terrible acts damaged Cole's adult life. Cole's delusions became a reality as he collapsed deeper into a nightmarish world. No one was safe from his rage, even his wife, Diana Faye Young Love Paschal, whose life he took in 1979. Despite admitting to taking the lives of 35 people, Cole was convicted of 3 and sentenced to life in prison in Texas. Cole's mother passed away in 1984, causing a significant shift in his demeanor. He was transported to Nevada and tried for strangling 2 women, getting the capital penalty. During an interview prior to his execution, he appeared extremely calm as he lifted his hand to light a cigarette. And he was asked how he felt knowing that he was about to leave this world, to which he replied, "Really, the last couple days have been really emotional. Not mentally draining emotionally. I just felt tired." He was also questioned about why he isn't fighting for his life, but he said he just doesn't care for it anymore. Cole was executed by lethal injection on December 6, 1985, at Nevada State Prison. In his closing hours, he struggled with the theological components of his conduct while still accepting his fate. Billy Wayne Cole's execution marked the end of a dark and tragic chapter in American criminal history. The weight of his acts weighed heavily on his mind as the clock approached his execution, leaving him emotionally tired. Number 8. Alan Dodd. Wesley. Alan Dodd was a notorious American serial criminal who perpetrated horrible crimes in the late 1980s. Dodd was born in July 1961 in Richland, Washington, and grew up in an atmosphere that foreshadowed his future aberrant behavior. Dodd's tumultuous past may be traced back to his childhood. He grew up in a violent house, with stories of his father physically harming him. These events were most likely influential in forming his disordered worldview. Dodd's predatory behavior escalated when he began preying on people while he was only 13 years old. Dodd's illicit actions quickly escalated to the point of taking people's lives. He committed his first known crime in the early 1980s when he abducted and took the lives of 2 boys from Vancouver. Despite the gravity of his crimes, Dodd eluded detection, continuing his aggressive behavior and seeking additional innocent victims. Dodd's reign of terror, however, came to an end in November 1989 when he made a key miscalculation that led to his arrest. He was caught in the act of abducting a youngster from a movie theater in Vancouver, Washington, by the boy's elder brother and many other moviegoers. They held Dodd until the cops came. Dodd admitted to a slew of heinous acts after his arrest. Dodd acknowledged taking the lives of at least 3 young boys, shocking investigators with the scope of his depravity. He painstakingly wrote about his atrocities in a scary diary, which was used as critical evidence during his prosecution. Dodd's trial began in 1990, and he finally pled guilty to the charges owing to the overwhelming evidence against him. He was given a sentence in 1991 for his actions, which made it clear that it was not fair to let him live. Dodd continued to show no remorse, making obscene gestures to the victims' relatives throughout court sessions. Before his execution, he gave an interview in which he appeared content with his punishment. When asked why he wanted to be executed, he replied, "I have to be because I would do it again." The interviewer then asked Allen whether he was looking forward to the execution, to which he answered that it might be a relief. Wesley Allen Dodd was executed by hanging on January 5, 1993. He became the first person who was hanged in the United States since 1965. Number 9. Wanda Jean Allen. Wanda Jean Allen, an African-American woman born in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma on August 17, 1959, endured a turbulent life that finally landed her in the middle of a high-profile judicial case. Allen's tumultuous past was distinguished by a variety of difficulties, including mental health concerns and a habit of violent outbursts. Her cognitive talents and emotional stability were impaired by her borderline intellectual functioning and borderline personality disorder. Despite these difficulties, she continued a friendship with Gloria Leathers. Allen and Leathers had a disagreement at a supermarket. As a result, they were led back to their home by a city officer. Tensions remained intense once inside the house. Allen asked Leathers to remain and try to work out their problems. An incident broke out as Leathers was about to depart. Leathers snatched a yard rake and smacked Allen across the face with it. Leathers and her mother fled the area after the incident to register a complaint against Allen. Allen chased Leathers and her mother as they drove away, despite the disagreement. Allen stated that she was attempting to persuade Leathers not to leave her. Allen observed Leathers still holding the rake as he approached him in a parking lot. Allen took a firearm from her vehicle. When Leathers approached, Allen fired a single shot, inflicting a grievous wound. Tragically, Leathers' mother observed the shooting, and police seized the weapon used in the crime near her injuries. Allen was convicted in the first degree and sentenced. Her violent outburst cost Allen her life in 1989. She stayed calm during an interview before being executed, sparking speculation that she was mentally ill. She maintained her innocence by stating, "I have never hurt anyone since I've been in this correctional facility in 12 years, even when I've been in the general population before, and they have no fear of me being in the general population." Allen's appeals were exhausted on January 11, 2001, and she was executed by lethal injection at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester, Oklahoma. Her execution spurred discussions and arguments regarding the justice, ethics, and effectiveness of capital punishment, as well as the need for better understanding and care for those who have mental health issues in the judicial system. Number 10. Chris Young. Christopher Young was 21 years old when he committed a brutal crime by shooting a person during a bungled robbery that was captured on a shop security camera. But he said he was inebriated and had no intention of taking the life of the 53-year-old victim, Mr. Hasmukh Patel. Christopher Young's lawyers emphasized his major achievements while on Capitol Row. He actively supervised problematic youngsters, intervened to prevent a prisoner from assaulting a guard, was instrumental in preventing someone from taking his life, and tried to reduce racial tensions among convicts. These activities demonstrated Young's dedication to personal development and making a huge change in the lives of others. What makes Young's case even more extraordinary is that the victim's family, including Hasmukh Patel's son, Mitesh Patel, protested his sentence and petitioned for mercy. Prior to the execution, Mitesh Patel spent time with Young, recognizing the possibility for transformation within him and emphasizing the necessity of having a positive father figure in one's life. Despite the Patel family's objections and emotional clemency requests, the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles refused their request, leaving them deeply disappointed. Nonetheless, the Patel family chose not to attend the execution, burdened by their personal loss and the difficult road they had undergone over the previous 14 years. Notwithstanding the victim's family's pleadings for mercy and evidence of his transformational actions, Chris was still on execution row. Before being executed, he was interviewed, and despite knowing that he was about to be executed, he stated, "I had numerous family members tell me to sit my ass down somewhere, and I didn't listen to him, and I should have, but I think they'll appreciate who I am now." Young concluded, "I want to make sure the Patel family knows I love them as much as they love me. Make sure all the children in the whole world know I'm being executed and that the kids I've been mentoring continue to fight. Warden, I'm okay." He was executed in 2018. Christopher Young described the lethal medicine as burning inside his body, and his final words were, "I can taste the lethal drug in my throat."